Okay, continuing on, we're going to talk about fertilization. So if you have sexual reproduction, you can have internal or external fertilization. External fertilization is where an organism would lay a whole bunch of eggs into the environment, which it has to be moist because it has to keep the eggs moist, and then the male will fertilize it. A lot of organisms that do this have spawning times, that is where individuals cluster to release gametes of either type, and or they do it seasonally, that is when it's warm or perhaps when it rains, like frogs or something like that. One thing about this is they produce a large number of gametes, and that's because there are few, the survival rate is pretty low, so few survive. Internal fertilization is better for survival, and this is where the male releases sperm near or in the reproductive tract. The environment can be dry, so this allows for life on land a little bit better. A lot of times this will involve courtship, and that's mainly when the mating isn't completely synchronous. One individual, usually the female, will have a particular mating time, and she will indicate to the male that she's ready, and different males will court her, and that's a very common thing. There's other ways certainly, but and then cooperative behavior, of course, that's copulation. And most organisms, even the external fertilization one, involve pheromones, that is chemical signals that indicate that it's mating time. For internal fertilization, there's a lot smaller number of gametes, both egg and sperm, and oftentimes parental care, because you're doing, you're kind of doing your reproductive effort in a smaller way, so you want to make sure that those offspring survive. All right. Then the other thing here, like down on the bottom, is as we look sort of as trends through the internal fertilization, you can have separate sexes with no distinct gonads, like cells that are just lining the coelom that will become either egg or sperm, and like in polychaetes or annelids. So that's kind of unusual, or not unusual, but it's one method. And then you can have separate sexes where you have gonads coming from specific organs, the ovary and testes, and in that case, of course, you're combining egg and sperm together through one of these methods up here. And in some cases, there might be something called a spermatheca. This is in some reptiles, like snakes, for example. They have a storage sac to store the sperm. And a lot of organisms, especially if they're aquatic, they will have a cloaca. This is an opening where the excretory, reproductive system, and digestive system exit the body. I guess reproductive could be exit and entry in this case, because we're talking about sperm being deposited in the cloaca and then making it up the reproductive system. Some organisms have a single uterus, but some organisms have a bicornuate uterus. This is like dogs, cats, for example. They will have two parts to their uterus so that they can have litters. So they'll have multiple placenta along that uterus, and that will allow them to have multiple offspring at a time. And just one last thing is that organisms generally, in doing sexual reproduction, generally are not monogamous. That's kind of rare. Usually polyandry or polygamy is more something that organisms do, where the female has a whole lot of males, or where they're just promiscuous sexually. Monogamy is more rare and happens in, generally speaking, organisms that are doing internal fertilization because of all the cooperative behavior that is necessary.